So we can start.
Yeah, we can start it right now. So, good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all once again to the NASA Space Apps Challenge 2025 Bootcamp. As we move forward in this exciting journey, today's session focuses on the practical tools and skills that will empower us to transform innovative ideas into working solutions for the hackathon. Right? I am honored to introduce our speaker for this session, Mr. Nishant Painter, founder of Shivantra. He is an entrepreneur and innovator with over 2 decades of experience across industries. He has worked extensively in software engineering, product development, cloud technologies, and leadership roles in both startups and global organizations. Through his venture Shivantra, he focuses on building solutions that combine creativity, scalability, and modern technologies. Today, he will be leading us into the session titled Building Space Apps on the Web Tools for Next Generation, where he'll share practical insights into the technologies, frameworks, and strategies that can help you create robust and scalable projects. On behalf of the organizing team, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. We all truly honored to have you with us and look forward to learn from you and from your knowledge and experience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Parth. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, am I audible clearly to you all, or is the
Yes, sir,
bandwidth
you
not
are
good?
audible.
Okay. And my screen is present to everyone, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. As Parth introduced me, I'm Nishant, and for the next 40 or 50 minutes, we'll be talking on how you can leverage the advantage of web technologies and building solutions for the challenges that you have on hand. Okay. So let's get started. So, okay, this will be the outline for today's discussion. We'll be broadly discussing the challenges that we have on our hand. How do we target the projects last year, and how do we came out as a winner for the challenge? And then we'll be discussing on how exactly are space and web related, the different roles of steps or the phases that we can achieve in application journey, like planning, design, development, testing, deployment, and finally how you can present yourself to the challenge, to the jury, so that you can outspoke everyone else and get your chance to be a global nominee, right? So let's get started. First of all, since this is about NASA Space Apps Challenge, so what exactly it is? So NASA is holding this hackathon every year where they give us some challenges which you can opt for on your own, and you can design the solutions for the same. Now NASA partners with many other institutions in order to form these challenges, and they also have a data layer where they will be providing you the real-time satellite data which you can use, and you can devise the solution on your own. One of the unique part of this hackathon is that it is not really you know linked to developers or anyone who is in the academic. It is open for all, so anyone can participate, from the industry as well, from non-coding department or students or innovators. So it is open to all, and you are a part of it. And this is what NASA gives us every year. So coming back to our journey, how did we do last year? So last year I was mentoring a team, and it's called Team Space Ciphers. And we took on the challenge. The challenge was, improving the ocean literacy worldwide. So this was a challenge in which we try to ease out how we can, make students and other understand that what is the ocean literacy and what are the different matrices that are used to follow when you are improving a certain thing in the ocean. So in order to implement this, we took a leverage of data which is provided by NASA, right? And it's of course the Plankathon Aerosol Cloud Ocean Ecosystem. It's a huge database that we use. And the team then sanitized the data, transformed it, and present it in a more visualized way, uh, in order for anyone to understand it properly, right? And these are few snapshots of the applications that we had worked upon, right? And as you can see that this is the website over here, which is a cohesive web application that has the presentation layer to it, as well as the data visualization and other interaction too. We develop different graphs, we develop different simulations, and as a result of which, you know, the team was a global nominee, and this is why web and why not any other platform. Let us have a brief introduction about the thing that we are looking forward to. So here with NASA Space App Challenges, there are different data and different problems. For example, there are climate change, then there are temperature problems, and many other things like deforestation. And there are enormous amount of data which is being generated every second on behalf of this problem, and NASA is working on it. So we need to, confine this data. We need to transform this data, and we need to present it to the world when we are solving it on some problem. And that can be easily achievable using the web. The reason being, web is very versatile. Anyone from Surat or from California can easily access your app. You need not to follow any compliances. You can showcase your work. You can showcase your visualization. Anyone can interact with it, and instantly you can roll back the changes to the world. So this is the power of web, which you can utilize in order to provide the solution for the challenges you will take on. So there is a journey on designing the application, on how do you go from an idea to the impact, because this is what we are really looking forward to when we are looking at the challenges provided by NASA. So here the ideation part is not specific to the challenge, but it is specific to the objective of the challenge. If you go through the challenges which are presented on the NASA Space App website, you will see that each challenge has a problem statement, and it has a very specific objective or outcome, which is what you should be focusing on while you are ideating your solution. Which means that, let's say that, okay, if you are easing out something for users to learn, your end result of the application should be that your application should be an easy gateway for others to understand. It's not about the problem, it's about the solution that you are building over here. Once you have the ideation, once you have the storyline ready with you, you then develop the application, you refine it, and then you present it to the jury, which will be an impactful version or an impact to the overall society, because ultimately the objective is to trigger one or other points which can help other out in the world, right? So this is how you should plan your journey. So the reason why we need to do this is to not dwell into development from the very beginning. We need to understand the problem, what we are looking forward to. We need to understand that what should exactly be the outcome and what impact will it have on the world. Right? So this is the global steps on designing the application or the tools that you will be using in order to build the solution. It's not just regarding the web apps that this is applicable, but it is applicable to almost all the challenges you will ever face. Right? And if we go deep down into the phases on which you will convert ideation, application, and impact, it breaks down into plan and strategize, design and wireframe, develop and test, and lastly, deploy and present. So we'll be going through each and every steps in more detail in the upcoming slide. Okay. So the first thing that you start with is planning and strategy. Now, this is the crucial part, because if you do not really comprehend what the objective is, you may dwell into a wrong direction, and which might not earn you the reward which you are looking forward to. So the first thing that you need to do after you have selected a challenge is to reach to be presented as an end result. What are the deliverables? Right? This should be very important and clearly defined before you actually start building anything. This is the first step. Second is, while you are designing a solution or while you are exploring a problem, there has to always be the audience. Who is this solution for? The same solution cannot be for all the groups. Of course, you can design a generalized solution, but that really depends on the solution that you are providing. You need to decide that, okay, what will be and who will be your target audience. And depending on the objective and the target audience, you will decide, okay, we will be delivering this thing to them. This is how you should do the planning and strategy. You won't be working on this, which is very important for you in order to have something presentable. It's team. And here you need to, decide that what are the roles which will be there in your team, and you need to dedicate member of your team. No two things. The reason is they should be specialized in their own area of working. They should have, very defined roles and responsibilities so that no two-person will work on the same thing. And this will save us time because you are not working on redundant things, right? And once you have defined the objective, you have defined the audience, you have defined the roles, next thing that you should focus on is what exactly should be your product, right? What exactly should be the first thing you should start with. So that's called MVP. It's called minimum viable product, which means that the product has not to be perfect, but it solves the core issue. Let's take an example. What does an MVP do? Okay. So you're building an application, for example, let's take a rudimentary example of railway booking. Okay. So what does an MVP is? An MVP is something which allows you to search trains and which allows you to do the booking. You forget about everything else. Your application needs to have to and from. It needs to have a date picker. It then have the list of trains once you have the filter criteria, and then it allows you to book. This is the simple MVP that you should focus on. You forget about the authentication and everything else that can be taken care of. You forget about the payment. It should focus on the core thing, right? So while you are planning this and strategizing this, you need to understand the challenge. You need to define your audience. You need to assign dedicated role to your team member. And lastly, you need to design your MVP, which is the bare minimum, the product that you're forming and the solution that you're providing to the challenge. It should be implemented. Now, as you know that, we have many tools. We have many terms now, which revolves around artificial intelligence and generative AI. You can also refer to it as vibe coding because many of the developer are going towards that part in which, they develop the solution by taking help of AI. We'll go back to how to utilize AI in the development part, but I'll be giving you, based on the steps, the help that you can take from AI and what are the softwares that you can take the help from. So in this first step, the help that you can take from AI is brainstorming. You need to summarize the challenge. You need to provide the elaborate details to AI. You need to confine and summarize it and try to understand that, okay, this is the main pain point of this challenge, right? That can be done with the help of AI. And for that, you can make use of ChatGPT and cloud, right? Another thing that you can use AI here is to summarizing the data set. Now, what does this mean? So when you take on the challenge, there will be many data associated with that challenge. And you cannot pre-assume or you cannot pre-analyze the data. So this is the time when you take help from AI and you boil down it to the very basic data, which you can understand, and then you can plan ahead, right? So this is the first step, planning and strategies. Any questions so far? Anyone? Of course, we'll be having a question answer session at the end of the presentation, but we'll be, discussing the questions midway if there is anything to discuss also.
Actually, sir, the participants do not have the permissions to unmute themselves, but
Okay.
they can write the questions in chat if they wish.
So I think it's better because I'll be on the presentation screen. So we can do the question answer session at the end of the presentation, right? So that you can
Yeah.
I can go through the questions at the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second step. Now that we have the problem, now that we have defined what we are trying to understand or what we are trying to solve, the next step is design, right? Which is very important because the first thing your jury or anyone uh, in your, in any of your part, if anyone is looking at you, it will be only the design and the applications which they are look forward to. Right? So the idea here is to make it more simple, right? You spend less time on designing thing and more time on building the features, right? So how do you achieve this, right? So first thing, it should simple. Second thing, it should not be that complex to operate. For example, if you look at the application and you need to refer to some manual in order to use that application, then it's not well designed, right? It is not the basic thing that we are looking forward to. It's more complex than what we have comprehend. So you must always, give it a try. Give a couple of users to use it and try to see that whether they really understand that, okay, they need to do this, then this, then this. Right? This is important. And yeah, is there anything? Okay. So Harshal, I think we can discuss this at the end as we just discussed, right? Because I'll be on the presentation slide. So it's hard for me to refer to the question in the Google chat. So we can do this at the end of the presentation. Of course, you can list down your question in here. Everyone can write it down based on the slides I'm presenting so that they do not forget. And I'll be going through each and every of this question at the end of the session. Okay. Yeah. So coming back to the wireframe part. Yes. So, okay, so we have designed wireframe. We have to look into it as in a simplest way possible. And the most important thing that you need to work upon is the uniformity, which means that when you are designing something, you know, for example, you have button. Okay, the button is the most common element you will see in web application. Now, when you're designing something, the button that you see on the website should be uniform across all your website and web application. This is what uniformity means. It's like all your page should have the same look and feel. It's not that one of your page is blue and another page is red. It should have common color scheme. It should have common typography. It should have common font size. And it should have the common elements which you will be reusing it on across all the pages or the web layouts, right? So how do you do this? In order to do this, you need to first design your design system, which means that you design title, you design subtitles, you design colors, you design your button. It can be a solid button or an outline button. And once you have designed this, only use this while building your website or web application. You do not code it from scratch again and again. You simply reuse the code. So it will be a component-based development of your application. Now, where do we use AI in this? Okay. So here I have listed few things. One is Relu and another is Figma. Figma is more advanced, but Relu is on the AI part. So of course you can start with Relu. So how do you work with Relu? So let's take an example of website. You are designing a website for scale. Okay. So there will be an about page. There will be on the courses page. There will be a department page. There will be a faculty page. There will be a contact page, right? So in Relu, you simply give a brief of what the pages are and what information will it have. And on the click of button, it will generate an entire wireframe, which is something like this, as you can see on the screen, without data, what elements will be on the screen and how you can, how you can design your content on the screen. This is easily done using Relu. Once you have this, you need to refine it until you are satisfied. And once you are satisfied with the wireframe, then only you go with the actual content, right? The actual design. system components that you have developed, right? Before that, you need not to jump on the development. Okay. So this is how it goes. We first do the planning and strategy. We then do the design and wireframing, and we'll use tools like Relum to design the wireframes, right, and the mockups. And Figma is an online designing collaboration tools, a tool in which there are different library of component as we just discussed. So you can copy paste that component and try to see that how your view or the web app will look, right? So this is how you should make use of Relum and Figma in designing your web application and wireframing your web application. Okay, so this is the step number 2. Now, step number 3, which is very important, which is the development part. Okay, so now let's break it down how the development works. Okay, so you now have the challenge, you have summarized what you need to do, you have designed, okay, that okay, my look and feel will be like this. It will have blue color, it will have red color button, it will have this font color, it will have this font size, and everything else that we do in the wireframe part. Now, the thing comes where we need to code this wireframe into an actually working web application. Okay, so how do we do this? Now, there are certain parts of application that you need to understand. Okay, the first thing is the front, which you are looking currently on the screen. The second part is the backend, right? Simple. The third part, which is not visible or is often considered to be a backend, are the databases, right? And the fourth part, which is important, is the interaction of this web application with some other application, right? Which is done usually through APIs. So we have front, we have back, even the front and the back communicates using APIs, and then we have the database. Okay. So now let's go through each one of them and how you can use them in building your application. So the first rule over here is don't go with something you don't really understand. Okay, even if it's more popular, you need not to start with it. You take a tech stack which you are comfortable with. It can be even PHP. It can be even HTML, normal CSS, and JavaScript. It doesn't matter. What matters is you can understand the code. You can easily make changes to the code, and you can, then iteratively update your code as and when required. But the options which I have listed over here are the most basic ones, I mean, most popular ones. For example, on the front, we have React. Of course, it can be Angular, but let's talk about React. In React, there is a meta framework which is called Next.js, so that you need not to worry about the routing part and things like that. Of course, you can refer to documentation. It's quite available on the website of Next.js. But the idea here is you take a reactive front-end library because there will be charts, there will be graphs, and based on your interaction, it should immediately reflect the change, right? So this is why I have kept React in here as a reactive programming library on the front. Next thing which is important for you guys is how to visualize the data, right? Because while solving the challenges and dealing with lots of data, there will be always the requirement of displaying it in a proper design. So for that, you will have libraries such as D3JS, we have Google Charts, we have Recharts, we have eCharts. So what it does is it has a predefined components. You can customize the color scheme. You can just plug into your data and it will display the graph based on your data. It's like creating chart in Excel. So you need not to create all this component from scratch. You take D3 component, you customize it and use it in your web application. Right? So this is how you should target your front end. Of course, this D3 or any other library also provide basic components which are not part of React. So even if you selected HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can easily consume this component. Next thing is backend. Now this is the thing where some processing occurs. Let's say on the website or on the web application, you have selected a filter that I want to have the data for last 7 days. So when you do this, when you create when you click on that for last 7 days, what happened is once it's selected, the API, the REST API will call a backend service, which will, take this parameter last 7 days. It will do some processing. It will query the database. It will get back the data. This data is then, transferred from backend to the front end using the REST API, and then it will display on the screen. This is how front end and backend communicates using REST API. So your backend is responsible for taking in the request from the front, processing the request and returning back the data. Now, there are many strategies on doing so, and there are many frameworks, tools, or languages that you can use. The most popular ones are JavaScript on the language side, Java and Python. So I have listed 3 different frameworks in here. One is Node.js, which is the runtime. It's not a framework. But with Node.js, you have a couple of options. You have Express.js, you have Nest.js, which you can use to quickly build the API, right? Then there is this Flask, which is used using Python, right? And in Python, you can create the APIs. Then there is Spring Boot, which is more advanced. But for a smaller use case, you can easily go with either Python and JavaScript. For more complex, of course, go with Java. It has minimal footprint. Now, these are the backends which requires you to do some coding or processing on your end. There are also some services which you can directly use or are referred to as backend as a service. So with minimal configuration, you have the endpoint ready. With minimal configuration, you have your database schema ready, and everything works fine. So few of them, as I have listed over here, is called Firebase. Firebase is Google own product, which you can use. And another one is Supabase. I would not promote you to directly go with this because it comes with a vendor lock-in, which means that let's say that you want to do some customization, which are restricted by this, then you need to change your backend architecture midway. So better start with Express. You can delegate some part to either Firebase and Supabase, but most of the part you should keep on the core part, right? So front end, backend, API. Now, this is the communication between the front end and the backend happens through REST API. But there will be time when you need to fetch the latest data from NASA. So again, it will be like backend to backend communication using REST API. Okay, there will be a format which you need to follow. You need to call that URL. You need to provide that format, and you will be returning the same data response, which then you transfer to the front end and display it in the graph or whatever components that you need to display. Right. So this is how front end, back end, and APIs work. The last part over here is the database. So the database is the part where you store the data. This storage can be SQL or NoSQL. I would recommend here that you start with NoSQL because the data space or the data which is provided by NASA is not generally very well structured. Some of the columns are present in certain data and some of the columns are not present. So if you go with SQL database, it will require you to have some default value when a column is not present. While a MongoDB or the NoSQL database it's not confined to any structure. So my suggestion over here is to start with Mongo or the NoSQL part. And if you feel that, okay, this is not good enough, then you start with Postgres, right? So this is how you should target front. This is backend, this is API, this is database. And when you are designing your team, each of the members should take on each of this responsibility. Now, you would say that, okay, database does not require a dedicated person, but it does because, when there is a large number of data sets which are given to you by NASA, it needs to be sanitized, it needs to be transformed, and it needs to be converted into your data objects, which is the tables or the JSON object in the database. So that should be covered by one person. The API interaction between front end or any third-party services, web services should also be considered in the APIs and should be handled by someone in your team. Then someone should work on the front end part. which is the displaying part. Someone should work on the logic building part. So that's how you distribute your role, and that's how you start developing your application. Now, how can we take help of AI in the development? So very popular example for code generations are Cursor and GitHub Copilot. Now, do not use it for creating the entire application. That is your idea. You should start by whatever you know, and you should only generate the part of that application using AI. The reason why you should do this is because generating the entire application will require you to spend more time when you are fixing bugs, because they are not good at targeting a very specific part of the application and fixing the bug. It's human brain that needs to work on it. So you take the application, you divide it into certain part, and only the part of that application you try to build it using the AI, right? So this is how you should make use of Cursor, GitHub Copilot for code generation, and you can make use of Claude or ChatGPT for explaining the API, because uh, it is required uh, as your front and the back end engineer will try to communicate. Okay, so this is the third part, development part. Now let's move on to the fourth part, which is the testing and the refinement. This is very important. So your app, as we have started out with the designing, that it should be very simple to understand. Okay, so unless you know you make some test and you figure out that okay, it's quite complex, unless you ask anyone outside of your team to test the application and they cannot get it under 30 seconds or half a minute, refine it, try to make it more simple, right? This is the first step. Second, always test your application on multiple devices and multiple operating system. What does that mean? You test it on web, you test it on a browser on your phone, you test it on your browser on your phone, a different browser on your phone. Then you test with either iOS or Android, depending on the phone that you have. And your app should work exactly same on all of these devices. This has to be taken into consideration, because you never know on a browser your jury is using, right? So this needs to be taken care of. Data accuracy, what does this mean is the data that you're fetching from NASA, you are making some transformation, make sure that the data is not drastically changed. If some value is 100, you need not to change it to 120 or 150. The value should remains the same, right? And simplify the user flow. Now, even for this step, you can make use of Cursor or ChatGPT for test. Now, what a unit test is? A unit test is you check a certain part of your application automatically. So whenever you are working on some other development and you need to check that okay, the previous developments are working fine or not, it can be done with the help of AI, right? So use AI here for unit testing and for edge case testing, which are the cases which are very unique. It's not very usual to happen in the application, but still there are certain things which needs to consider. For example, the user enter emojis in the input field. Now you need to consider this, right? So try to create this edge test cases and the unit test cases with the help of AI, and use this to test and refine your application. So coming back to the steps, the first step was plan and strategize. The second was designing. The third was development. The fourth was testing and refinement. And finally, the last step is the deployment. Now, this is the most important step, because once you have created everything, once you have developed, once you have designed, the only thing that you will then use to communicate with your jury is the deployment that you have, right? So keep it simple, try to see or try to make the health status that okay, it is working fine. And this is very important, that it should work with limited internet, because the speed of the usually the same. So try to build your application, try to test your application with throttling. You can go to the browser inspect and you can set slow 3G or fast 3G, and try to see that how your application is getting loaded, right? You need to place appropriate loaders on the screen. You need to have some message on the screen if it's taking much long, so that when the jury is testing your application and the speed is not good, they knew that something is processing. Just having a blank screen will look like as if the application is breaking. Right? So try to consider these cases. Try to have proper UI UX and uh, test in low internet speed. Coming to the platform where you can deploy this. So there are available, right? And it comes with free tiles, which generally are very suitable in your use case for NASA challenges. Few of them are Netlify, Vercel, Firebase. I would prefer Vercel over here because Vercel is quite popular. And since if you decide to go with React ecosystem or Next.js, they have a very good support for that as well. Now here, the next point is to preload data for smooth demo. What does this mean? It means that there is some cache layer which allows you to quickly get the data instead of hitting the database each and every time. It can be anything. It can be a small array, or it can be a small JSON object in which you have temporary data, right, which quickly gets into your system. And not each and every time you need to hit the database. This will definitely improve the speed of your application, right? And lastly, the branding, logo, tagline, landing page. This is important for your team. You should present your team on the website or on the web application, and the branding should look cohesive. I mean, the colors, as we discussed, should be common on almost all the pages. Another thing that you need to focus over here is the server and the serverless deployment. Now, what is the difference between server and serverless deployment? So the traditional way of deploying the application was, you imagine that you have a work machine, okay, a work machine with 2 GB of RAM and some SSD. So you first install the database, you first install the language that you need to use and other application, and then you start your application. This is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to use a third-party service which handles everything, right? So let's say if we took on the database. So the first option is that you manage your database on your own, right? You deploy it along with your application. Another way of doing it is using a third-party services like NeonDB or Mongo Atlas, in which you can simply create the table. They will provide you with an URL. You can configure this URL in your application, and it will communicate directly to the database. You need not to manage anything on the database side, right? So try to balance out that what services you can use, third-party services that you can use, and what core functionality you need to implement by yourself. Again, you can make use of AI helpers in here, right? You can make use of, we already discussed about ChatGPT and Claude, but there are Midjourney and DALL-E for creation of image. This is very important because you will need stock images while developing the website and creative look and feel of your web application. The sixth and the final step is the presentation and the impact. Now, your application is one part, but the way you present it is another, right? It should be like storytelling. So you have the problem, you have the solution. So the flow of your application should be as if you're telling a story, right? And the story is very well important, considering the technology that you have used. If you have just used the latest tech stack, but you cannot, narrate the problem or the solution that you have provided, then it will all be wasted, right? Just enough storytelling and the technology. Also, focus on the impact. This is the objective of the challenge that you are trying to solve. Then you have documentation. This is very important. There is this web application that you think that easily understood by everyone using it, but that's not the case. You should always have a documentation on how to use your application. What is the architecture of your application? What one should do if something breaks, right? This is a proper technical documentation of your application. Then you should have a small presentation on one of your application. Then you should have a small presentation on what you exactly do, what challenges what challenge you took on and how do you provide the solution. And finally, the GitHub repository. This GitHub repository should have all your code, but it should also have README, which lists on how exactly your application works and what if someone wants to start the application in your local. Right? You should have exact technical step listed over there. Then there should be appropriate videos while you are submitting the challenge. You also need to, record a video with proper narration and proper images. And for that, you can make use of AI, Claude for Pitch, ChatGPT for slide flow, and AI design tools that infographics or any other things like this to have a proper presentation. Right? So let me revise the steps for you. The first one was planning and strategy. The second one was design. Then we have deployment. Then we have test. Then we have development. Then we have testing. Then we have deployment, and finally the presentation part. Right. So combining this 6 steps will assure you that you have a completely polished web application, documentation, and all the details that a person should have if they want to contribute to your application or start your application on their own. Right? So now, these are the steps that you will follow before submitting your solution, but the last 48 hours is very much important. So your strategy is to focus on the MVP, try to quickly solve something, okay? You pick on the problems that excite you. It's not the case that you take on the hardest challenge. You should always go with things which interest you and not with the shiny objects, right? You build small, focus on the impact, okay? And try to complete feature by feature. You don't jump into all the feature at once. You prioritize your feature. What are the most important one? You start with them. You take on the next feature, take on the next feature, because time is very important, and it's not generally the case that you will be able to complete all your feature. You prioritize feature, the most important one, right? And the diverse team wings, we have already experimented with this, worked with. They have different member who worked with. They have different member who worked very specifically on different part. One worked on the tech, one on the design, one on the documentation part, and things like that. And with the help of that, they were able to get into the global nomination, right? So this is how you should design your strategy. And lastly, it's your time to build. I mean, of course, there are ample of documentation and data available to you, but try to pick up the simplest you can. Try to work on it. Try to build something. Even if it fails, it's completely fine. Try to move as closer as you can, right? And maybe you can be the next global nominee or win the project on the NASA. Okay. So lastly, question and answers. We can go through question and answers now. So the first is, Harshal, which things are tools to help for beginner? I think we already discussed this part. On each and every steps, you have different tools which you can start, but select the one for which you are comfortable with, and you already know how it works. Other questions? Anyone else? So maybe I can ask the questions now, right? Okay. So I think, Parth, we can conclude. I hope you all enjoyed the content, and you can reach us out. I mean, Samruddhi. Okay, this hackathon is online and or offline. Generally, it's offline, but you need to submit your solution online. If I know only basics of Figma, should we go with Figma or sticks to HTML? See, Figma is not really something that you compare with HTML and CSS. Figma is like Paint. Okay, in Paint you design the screen, but HTML CSS is the language which is used to develop that image, right, on the website. So Figma is just for designing. You need to convert it into HTML and CSS to make it work. There are automated plugins that you can use, but this is the difference. How should a team prioritize between building strong core functionality and preparing an impactful presentation? And you can go check out the previous projects that are already available on the sites, you know, and on deciding the core functionality, it is very important that you fully understand what you're trying to solve, right? And what is the main pain point of that challenge? You start with it, right? And then you add the different UI, UX, and different other add-on features, right? And for impactful, to be more visual, try to be more coherent, have the common color scheme that you have on your web application in your presentation. Okay, firstly, Sachin, what I want to ask, is it good idea to use SAM server to make my solution which I'm comfortable with? I'm not sure about the deployment of website. Yeah, of course, you can do it. Yeah, SAMP is nothing but, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. The only thing that you need to consider here is that you should be well versed in designing the REST API using PHP and processing using PHP. One limitations that you will face in having the PHP website is that you will see the UI blocking, which means that, let's say, if you change something, you will see the loading on all of your screen, right? This is generally not the case with uh, non-blocking technologies like Node.js. But of course, you can start with Zep. It's perfectly fine. Any other question? What AI helps best when it comes to PHP? You can make use of Cloud, Cursor, or ChatGPT. Any advice from your past about research? What research exactly, Harsu? All my advices are listed over here. So uh, try small, head for the big things. Try always start with something you are most comfortable with and try to solve the core part. Okay, even if it does not look good at first, it's fine. Try to solve the main part. Yes. Can just go that website that was global movie insurance. I'll be sharing, what I can do is let me check if it's already there. Uh, uh, so this is the GitHub of the team that have won the global nominee. You can go through it, how it is structured, right? Let me see if other links are working fine. I'll be sharing more details on it. Right. Okay. So this is the global nominee that you will find on the Space App Challenge, the Space Cipher team. In here, you can, project, the member, and all the other details. You go through this, how clearly everything is defined. Okay. What else? So it takes a lot of time to research on browser. So can you suggest best AI for web scraping? Generally, scraping is not that I mean, scraping is always objective, right? And the research that you do are mostly subjective. So only when you know that, okay, this is the website that you need to scrape for a specific data, then use the web scraping. Otherwise, it should always be your own research. But surely, I'll be sharing the tool with you. Just a second, I'm just searching for it. It's called AP5. So this is the tool you can use for web scraping. Anything, I mean, for the best, you try to go through their website and try to pick up style. It's not that the same best web app works with everyone. Try to see that what is the simplest or what is the complex part that they are trying to solve, and try to see what fits into your style. Yeah. Any other question? By the way, you can follow us. We also post tech insights, right? Information on how you can use tech, and maybe it can be helpful for you as well. Okay, so I think, Path, we can conclude now. No more questions there.
I would
Thank you
like
so much,
to.
sir.
Yeah. Okay, tools for
On
animation or
behalf,
tools for, just one last question from her, sir. Tools for animation and PPT presentation. If you want to go with AI, then use Gamma. Gamma is a tool in which you can create the vector images or the presentation. And if you want to design everything on your own, you can use Google Slides or Canva. Right? Canva also have an appealing view of presentation. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah, Path. We can conclude now.
thank you so much, sir. On behalf of the organizing committee, I'll be concluding the session. So
Thank you,
we
Amita.
express our deepest gratitude for you contributing your time, effort, and sharing your wisdom with all of us. I'm sure the participants are ready for the hackathon. They have geared up. And
Yes.
thank you so much for giving such practical insight that will be helping all of us.
Thank
So
you.
once again, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. And I can share the PPT with you. You can forward it to them, right? Or maybe I can share it over a link so that everyone can have it, right?
Sure, sir. That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It was a
Thank
good
you.
session, and it's always pleasure to talk with you all. Uh,
Thank you, sir. The participants are requested to fill the feedback form. The link is sent in the chat.